Hello, everybody. Welcome. It's good to see everybody. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Paola Boucher. I'm the Senior Program Coordinator of the Texas Language Center. And before we start, before I introduce Tom, I have a couple of announcements to make. On February 12th, we are sponsoring a Language Love Fest, which is a festival of all languages. You can come, get some hot cocoa, some cookies, and learn all about languages that are offered at UT and the amazing classes that you can participate. So if you're a professor, please spread that word with your students so they can come. On February 25th, we have the second Language Matters series about AI, which is responsible AI for language learning, with KC4, which is part of UT SAGE. So she's going to be talking specifically to AI, to professors of language and instructors, anything about UT SAGE, but you can actually get feedback and talk about very specific things. So I really encourage everybody to attend. And then we have the Professional Development Awards deadline for all language professors and instructors on January 30th. So please send your form, get some money for your research, for your class, for revamping whatever it is that you want to do to get our students the best and continue doing the great job that you do. Okay? So.
Please, we're used
yes,
every cent
we do.
Been given. Please.
We are making it rain. So put the submission. Yes.
Anything that is receivable,
yes.
we can cover.
Yes.
When is the deadline?
January 30th.
Sadly,
So yes.
I need an assistant to work with me because we can't pay for time. Am I not on? Oh, I have a green light on there. Oh, bloody hell.
Got two green lights. Thank you. Thank you.
yes.
So please, put in an application, anything that's receivable. So it can be
Correct.
goods, hardware, software,
Conferences,
conferencing,
everything. And it's open to professors and language instructors and AIs. So,
all levels.
TAs, everything. So, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I was under the impression that hardware and software, these were not included.
Some of these things can be included, like they're always submitted. If we can make it
Yeah.
happen and it's within the regulations,
Right.
it will happen.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
So always submit. So now I'm going to introduce Tom, who literally needs no introduction because he's a rock star, but Tomás Jesús Garza is a UT Regent and University Distinguished Teaching Associate Professor in the Department of Slavic and Eurasian Studies and the Director of the Liberal Arts Texas Language Center. He is also affiliated faculty in the program in Comparative Literature and the Center for Mexican American Studies. He teaches Russian language and literature at all levels, applied linguistic courses in contemporary Russian culture, and critical pedagogy in teaching world languages. He traveled to and conducted research in Russia from 1979 until 2020, and during that time lived in Moscow for over 5 years. He's a native Texan, and he received his doctorate from Harvard University in 1987. During his 34-year tenure at the university, he received numerous prizes for undergraduate and graduate teaching, including the Texas Excellence Award, the President's Associate Award, the Harry Ramsum Award, was inducted into the University Academy for Distinguished Teachers in 2003, selected for a Regent's Outstanding Teaching Award in 2009, and was named the Texas 10 by the Texas Alumni Association in 2018. His current research is on cultural portraits of machismo in contemporary Russian and Latino cultures, the visits to the American of Vladimir Vysotsky,
Yeah.
and practices for social justice in
Bravo.
education and teaching. Everybody is very, very happy to hear you talk, and we can't wait.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Paula. Thank you. Thank you, colleagues. Wonderful to see you coming out on this, probably the last day before the great ice storm of 2026 hits, and we'll all be shut in yet again, and the Texas power grid will almost certainly not hold, and we'll see what happens. But it's wonderful to see you. These are not easy times. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. We all know the massive target that humanities has painted on it, and we're all, what I love about us, both as the humans behind it and the field itself, is quite how dedicated we are to the mission that we have and the work we do, as well as the fact that everyone at this table and all of your colleagues out there as well know that we will do this until we are forbidden from doing it, which is what I do love about us all. Thank you for being here. The topic today is, of course, one that's on all our minds. I am of the school that tends to be the if you can't beat them, join them mode. AI, as it crept in, I think a good decade ago, really, we started seeing the first iterations of it, clearly became something we needed to deal with, whether those of us who may have had issues about the students will simply plug AI in and we won't, what we're going to be getting, and whether it's homework or workbooks or in class production even, is simply going to be a ChatGPT version of our words and languages. However, I do firmly believe that our learners, this to a point Charlie was making earlier, I think our students are terrific. I think in general, especially the Gen Zers, and now we'll have a new generation coming in soon, have an almost kind of duty to their own education. It's something, there's a moral gene in the generation, it seems, that knows it can and will use artificial intelligence and any other modality that would help. Goodness, I mean, I'm not going to say, please don't use a dictionary because you're going to find all the words you need there. To me, it's the same thing. What can you do with AI that's going to help our mission in general to make you a learner of X language that eventually becomes a communicative performer, speaker in that language? So today I'm kind of focusing on this idea of using artificial intelligence. I'm specifically, I'll give my rationale in just a second, of looking at the advanced level, but the kind of base argument, if you will, of what I want to say in the few, I'm going to try to keep it really terse because I want a discussion to go on here in our short time together this afternoon. I really think can go on at any level of proficiency. So say what? Artificial intelligence in support of, in this case, advanced language learning. I'm going to quick introduction to what I'm doing. Not that I need to tell you what generative AI is, but I think the list that when I simply asked my advanced Russian classroom last week what programs they were using at that moment in class, maybe it'll surprise you. I'll show you what I came up with. Then get to AI and world languages teaching, why I chose to focus on the advanced level today. And then this course, Russian through Global Debate, which is, by definition, the fact that we're doing debate is at a quite high level of production and proficiency, some assumptions that I had about using AI in this course, and then some conclusions that I've come to based on data that I gathered from the last two groups of debaters that I had. And then a couple of resources, and some time I really want to focus on Q&A on this. So, quickie introduction. The movement for me is actually about two AIs in today's conversation. One being artificial intelligence, which I think you all assumed would be the focus of today's talk, and indeed it is, but I don't want to diminish in any way the other AI that's been around in language education for nearly 50 years now. The phrase, it's kind of gone out of vogue, and it's a pity because I think it's so crucial now that we've got artificial intelligence as one of our factors to deal with, and that's autonomous interaction. Getting our learners to work on their own in the language, to do things on their own, not have, we're the professors, right? We profess. We say, here's the grammar, here's the vocab, here's a list for you, put this all together. No, but rather have the student, the learners themselves kind of get the information in front of them, use our mentorship, tutelage to get them then to interact with those language bits and eventually come up with their own production. So harvesting that hive mind that artificial intelligence is of linguistic and cultural data that provide a kind of set of data, of working material that advanced learners, and indeed I should put advanced in brackets because it's any level, can then begin to use their own independent interrogation to see what does AI give me? What do I know from this? What can I learn from this? What are some new lexical items? Maybe there are some new turns of phrase, depending again on the proficiency, and then eventually come to presentation of their own language in context. So the question, and I purposely popped that up simply because, what is it? What is AI? And so I asked ChatGPT last week, what are you? It said, what is generative AI? And it gave me. It said, generative AI creates content autonomously, mimicking human creativity. It generates text, images, or other data, revolutionizing various industries with its innovative and dynamic capabilities. Sounds so strangely good, and yet we're kind of looking at your faces going, yeah, that's sort of not fish, not fowl. There's something about it, and this is what we tell our learners, right, is that, yeah, it's quite amazing. You can ask GPT or any AI interface just about anything in any language, and it will provide you with text data that's been pooled together. But it is right away, we can say, what did I say about it? I mean, I didn't ask about what its applications were for industry. So that right away, in my mindset, I could say that's not of interest to me. But it does give us a good place to start. So I wanted, in a sense, to let AI define what AI is. Our students, when I asked them this question literally a few days ago, so what do you have right now on your cell phone? These are what I got. There are others, and some of you may be using, I know you may be using things like AI Editor. I was surprised, in fact, that that one wasn't on the list, but they, my students first and foremost put up Duet from Google. Vast majority said they use ChatGPT, obviously, and have been for half a dozen years. Synesthesia is being used quite a bit, and there was one more that they said Claude. That was the other one that they used quite a bit. But this was their kind of panoply from just a week ago, and I found it very interesting that they didn't for a minute think, oh gosh, do I actually show my cards? And so I said, so what GPT, what are you using right now? And they said, boom, no problem. They just gave me the list. So let's take a look at this. So what I'm proposing, this is kind of the thesis, if you will, of this short little presentation, is nothing earth-shaking. But I hope it's something that it may change. If it doesn't change your mind, maybe it'll move you in a direction of seeing AI toward the application of language learning be really much more of an ally. Not just for our learners, but for us as well, that it actually is going to help us in the endeavor of getting them to higher levels of proficiency, especially, I contend, at the higher levels of proficiency, meaning already at the advanced, moving intermediate to advanced and advanced to superior. So an example would, again, this is truly, I just pulled this out and typed it in, and this, what I got is what you're seeing. So I just typed in, because in the course that I'll talk about in a minute on debate, one of the Lincoln Douglas kind of one-on-one debate topics that they have is on gun control. These are really kind of quick fire. They have no time to prepare. We give them, they get the topic in class. They get to sit aside for about 15 minutes quickly, and they usually get on AI to swat up a new vocabulary, and then they debate for 5 minutes on each side. So the question I just simply put in is, are gun control laws a violation of the Second Amendment of the US Constitution? And I got about 4 screens very quickly, using ChatGPT as my AI interface, of commentary on the subject, including commentary on the Second Amendment, which I found actually legally very interesting, with citations. And then, to my surprise, it gave pro and contra arguments. It actually debates the topic. Now imagine in a debate class, this could pretty much do the whole course. Say our students could just go in and say, oh, I'm doing pro, so I'm going to just use these arguments. I'm doing contra, I'm going to do these arguments. But we find, just as in that first example, the language that ChatGPT or any other AI interface produces is not always exactly what this learner wants to be able to say about this or that subject. So I pop that in, I pull one little, this is in the very first paragraph. So it's just truly one sentence that I pulled out of context. Supporters of gun control argue that safety laws are compatible with the Second Amendment, citing the historical understanding that the right was never absolute. It's pretty good, actually. It's a pretty good argument and against gun, in that sense, of allowing people to have gun control laws in place. So AI gives us that language, which maybe for an threshold intermediate learner would still be, sentential length, but it's pretty complex lexically, but especially in terms of conveying a thought. So the learner's intervention then might produce language closer to the Second Amendment, kind of coming to a conclusion based on that bit of text. The Second Amendment does not provide the absolute right of the individual to own a gun. And that now is the other AI, the autonomous interaction. What goes on here between what AI gives us and learner intervention is, in my view, the cool part. That's where what we do in our classroom now becomes the most important thing, trademark, right? Is to get our students, learners, to be able to take this fairly difficult text and then working either independently or in small groups, or in the case of a debate class, in their teams, to negotiate the language from that to come up with what they're able then to produce in class in the debate. So that's going to just start us that as a base and go to the class. Why did I choose the advanced level? Well, for a lot of reasons that I put up here, and I'm not going to go through this in any detail because I want to leave time to talk, but I was really trying to look at these 4 conditions, which could refer to any of our proficiency levels. Really, the exception may be of really, really 0-level novice. But if even novice high, all the way to superior distinguished. Scope of speech, right? What can, in a sense, what is what can you do with the amount of speech you have? This is all based on ACTFL's language of what constitutes advanced level knowledge. So at the advanced level, you should be able, and you'll see how this relates to debate, to convey routine work-related interactions on topics of community, national, or international interests. So you can see right away, that would fit into a course on maybe global studies or international relations or debate. Then speaking skill, particularly that one isolated skill, of being able to report facts, make recommendations, provide descriptions, instructions, narrations. Again, all the wonderful bits and pieces at the advanced level that would fit very well into a course organized by under the rubric of debate. Discourse length. So we talked already that at the intermediate level, which so many of our learners get to in just the, at least for now, the foreign language, the world language requirement in liberal arts of being at that intermediate mid or intermediate high threshold level has discourse at the sentential level. So learners can produce good, solid sentences that are meaningful, that fit discursively into a very simple but straightforward conversation. How much is, where can I find, how do I get to, who is, what is, right? At the advanced level, a threshold and higher, we're looking at paragraph length discourse. So constructing a series of sentences that are connected discursively. And that's a really important part because ChatGPT or any other AI interface will produce discourse at that length, at that level, paragraph, chunks. The connectivity, though, that pragmatic side of discourse, maybe this talk will sound really strange in a year, but at this moment, this point in time, AI still can't quite sort through that yet. How do you link together a series of sentences into a cohesive beginning, middle, and end argument in a paragraph, even if it's just discursive, you're just describing something, the connection, the connective tissue, as it were. Sometimes it's linguistic, most of the time it's pragmatic. Sometimes you'll see the use of therefore or however being used in a way that a home speaker of that language would never use, right? Okay, so that, to me, that's an important part, the discourse thing. And then, of course, something we're, I think, all interested in from the 0 level all the way up to full distinguished level is the second culture of the world language, that speakers now can recognize and refer to major historical, cultural events, demonstrate some understanding of cultural and social, I think say societal norms of any of the places where that language is spoken. So that's kind of one of the cool side effect products that come from this particular methodology. So I wanted to really try this out in 2 iterations, of the last 2 iterations of Russian through global debate. I thought this course was a perfect one to look at because, one, it engaged with controversial global issues. The learners are required to create arguments both for and against a proposition. So at the beginning of each unit, we used it. You can see the reference here. This textbook, which still was published about a decade ago, really has these 6 topics that are of current interest, of things like ecological issues, political issues, freedom of speech issues, and so forth. The students are required then to make arguments, create arguments based on a proposition, resolve that, something is happening or should happen, and then they say, I'm on the affirmative side or I'm on the negative side. Once the teams have been set up, they deliver oral arguments in a debate format and must be able to not only say, this is why I believe that gun control should be put into place in the United States, but also then to be able to refute the arguments that their opponents will give on the same topic. I hope fairly straightforward in that kind of debate setting. So, an example, and again, I've got sheets and sheets of this stuff. So many bits and pieces that the students, with their permission, I asked them if they didn't mind my using, they took screenshots of their own use of, in this case, I don't think it is ChatGPT, actually. I was about to say ChatGPT, but this particular one I chose is not from that. But whatever AI interface they were using, they would enter the question that was based a lot on the material in the textbook, on the topic they were researching, and that's important, that research was a part of the course. So get online and figure things out, use AI to start. So they would ask this question. The chapter was called, it was one of the units, this in Russian, безопасность или права человека, freedom, right, in the sense of being secure or having human rights, this kind of balance. When might human rights be affected by security? Things like Wars Powers Acts, as we're kind of seeing now, having your phone tapped because you are suspected of being an enemy of the state or whatever the case is. So this individual, a really great start in my view, right? She was worried, nervous about her even being in this course. The requirement to be in was you had to be at intermediate high or higher, and she really was just taking an intermediate high. She wasn't quite threshold advanced yet. So she said, so what do, she asked me, what do I put into ChatGPT? What would you put in English, I asked. So she simply put in the topic with a question mark. The topic, security or human rights, question mark. And ChatGPT produced this chunky, actually, again, much more, but that's the first paragraph. That goes on, begins saying, so security and human rights are very, very complexly intertwined. I'm going to try to use some of the lexis that's in here. Human rights, such as the right to life, freedom, equity, have become the basis of security of all society. And the provision of a national security has sometimes been demanded by the limitation of those very rights, which must be regulated by appropriate laws so that they cannot be violated in their use. For example, and you can see here, through the United Nations or the European Union and other organizations who can work for the harmonious interaction to understand through monitoring and the protection of these rights so that security does not become a device for the lowering of freedoms. And Mike, the clumsiness of that translation is actually in the text. That is, it's good Russian, trademark, good Russian. No first language Russian speaker would produce quite that paragraph, but it's a good beginning. And the vocabulary for the topic is all embedded in there. So now comes that complicated bit. This is now a little Chomskyan of moving from the stuff that we put in the black box, shaking it vigorously, and language comes out. So how do we now get the learner to go from this to something they can then use in class? So that's, again, now this is where we come in. All this was done at home, the asking of questions, creating the big language samples. Students would come in to class on purpose the next day. Sometimes we did the searches, the first one or two we did in class, with notebooks of this stuff. Now, here's all the material I got on the topic. What do we do with it? Now get into your 2 teams and start working through it. What are the words that you see recurring? When you see words that keep coming, that may not be familiar to you that much. For example, the word itself for security, which in Russian is without danger. Literally, без опасности literally means without danger. So that for most of our learners is new, and they just see that occurring, so that becomes very quickly part of the new lexicon. Terms that we'll talk about, things like usage, law, legal administrations. Again, not normal vocabulary for someone coming into the course, but quickly by seeing it reoccurring in the data. This is kind of like looking at big data right away. With a group of 3 or 4 students, they see, wait a minute, this term keeps coming up. What is it? What is it? What is it? They look it up. Oh, that's going to be really important. We need to use that. So they become, in a way, this is the other AI. This is that autonomous interaction. It's not me saying, oh, here's a list of words you're going to need to know to be able to do a debate on security versus human rights. They have now, by using AI, are beginning to create their own working vocabulary for the topic. Not unlike the way we would do back in old school by doing a search, not on Google, but rather in a library on the topic to see who are the leading sources, the leading authors, the leading authorities on a given topic, and do the research that way. So this version, however, taking a language sample that AI has produced and making that the now small big data base that the learners use to come up with their own language has become now the kind of new way of doing that same kind of research. Let me take, oops, to the next bit. Oh, I don't mind that. There we go. Okay, so what is going on here? So I contend that this idea of the autonomous learning process, going from the models, the chunk of data that AI produces, to the learners speaking themselves, produces a different way of us working in class that's not completely unlike working through kind of text materials. If you were doing a language through X literature, kind of saying, but rather than having a literary work, or could even be a publication work, right, from a newspaper source or media source as your basic text. The students have created their own text using AI resources. So the series of the little yellow squares would be on the one team. Let's say this is the affirmative team sitting over here, negative here. The 5 or 6 members who are working on the negative side have those 6 different texts to start with. Boom, they drop them out all on the desk, either outside of class or sometimes we do work in class. I have them work as a group to try to then glean comprehension of the various bits and pieces of language they've pulled from AI. What are the necessary parts, the most important parts? What vocabulary do they see repeating? And clearly kind of forming a base for what they want to talk about. What kinds of new turns of phrase can they see being used to help make arguments? And then what also to discard from the mess that's going on that they see in all that language that's been produced. They then produce an edited version of that small big data now into their own learner-generated revision of that language. And from that, the addition of their own sources. So to be able to debate, they need to say not only security is guaranteed by such and such a notion of the United Nations, but to be able to provide the source of where that information came from. I think that's one of the coolest things that I came off this particular experiment with, was seeing how much students quickly found out that AI, rather than being the constant source of you've cheated on your assignment because you've used AI, instead became just another source, as long as they cited it. Right? I got this from, this is where we found this information, and we've now verified that indeed, if I look at Article 16 of Resolution 32 of the United Nations, oh wow, there it is. There's the guarantee of human rights that was passed in 1999. Boom. So that's going to be their own addition. Meanwhile, I've provided them then with additional sources based on, that's what the textbook is for, that might be the debate stuff, the material that would be about how to then turn all the things they pulled off AI into usable material in front of an audience in a formal debate with two sides. And that then goes to the creation of their notes for the presentations. They take that material, create the notes for their presentations, and ultimately through, this is a 2-week process, then at the end of the 2 weeks, have the formal debate, the final product. So where that's a kind of blitzkrieg tour of that bit of the course. So what I found in these 2 iterations, one from goodness, where are we now? 6, so 24, 25, was through OPIs, mostly 2 things, SOPIs, simulated oral proficiency interviews, which basically were the debates themselves, that I could see, especially in the rebuttal section, which are completely unscripted, where the student's speaking level was. But that's not a formal way of measuring. So I also did beginning and end of course OPIs for the students in those classes. And what I found, these are not in any particular order, but I want to just kind of put up where were the greatest increases in specific skill sets in their raised levels of proficiency, increased vocabulary, and that came out even on the course of evaluations, was this: I never knew I could learn so many words in a semester, that kind of thing. Vocabulary development, grammatical accuracy in use. So my distinction here is, obviously there's no way, and I don't want them at the advanced level to simply produce paradigms of a verb or declensions of nouns and so forth in Russian to show, oh, I've learned this I learned a new verb, but I also now can conjugate it in all its various tenses and moods and so forth. But rather, in use, to be able to know which aspect of the verb to use, which tense to use, what modality, and that grammatical accuracy increased. The use of discourse features was one that I was surprised by. The ability to be able to use connectors, to be able to use these organizers of their own thoughts to say, one can see, this is language that only comes from AI, right? And our students, it's not in our textbooks. One can see from the past 13 years experience in the United States of the numbers of murders that occurred as the result of, and these turns of phrase came clearly from AI, these discourse organizers. And the expansion of cultural knowledge, largely not so much AI generated, but rather AI inspired. So AI might make a reference to an uprising. In the case, again, I'm trying to think of our different topics that we had. One was the so-called the putsch that occurred in 1991 in the still Soviet Union before it collapsed. A number of our own students, who, even though their area is Russian studies, for them this was a historical event, and so they went in and did a deeper dive into that because AI said, oh, and of course everyone knows about this because it's out in the big data set. But for our learners, this was new information that added to their own knowledge. And finally, really, really, in my view, changed their way of thinking critically and developing argumentative skills. Much of that came from not AI again, but from the textbook used in conjunction with AI. So from that, I've borrowed a great deal in debt of gratitude. The 2 works by Brown and Jennifer Bone from 2014, 2015 are the basis of the debate course, but I also wanted to put up at least a few of the more, where I was pulling some material last year from Chen's articles and this year Kopczynski's, I guess it's also last year, Kopczynski's article. Machinska and Winkler's piece is a full volume, by the way. I put these up here largely, I put the DOIs and so forth because all of them are open access. And I'll be sure to make the slides available through TLC as always. So that was the experience that I had using for 2 iterations of the debate course that, in my view, helped me a lot to solidify the reflex notion that I had that AI was not our enemy. I didn't want to go to pen and pencil tests for everybody. I didn't want to go back to the only thing that's going to count for your grade now is going to be the oral proficiency interview. That's it. I want to be sitting in front of you when you produce speech. I don't trust that you haven't looked on your cell phone, but rather to use that power of artificial intelligence to encourage more of the other AI, the autonomous interaction. So that's me. I'd love to get your questions, comments, pushback, debate. Oh, thank you. No, please. Save that till after the questions if you want to. Is this, please. And where am I doing? Oh, good. Okay, I went about 3 minutes over. Sorry.
Is this on?
It's on.
Okay, cool. Thanks so much. Really interesting. And I'm like a pretty novice, like maybe not a novice AI user, but a novice like using AI in the classroom with my students.
Yeah.
And I always have a hard time wrapping around my head around like exactly what am I telling them to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering, I got a really nice global sense of how things were framed and I could see ways to use it. But sort of like the like devil is in the details, like
Yes.
what sort of things were you telling students to do specifically? How were you prompting them? And how are you kind of transitioning them to like, I love the idea of AI is producing this volume of material that you're
Right.
going to synthesize and, you know, like re-articulate in your own voice. Like, how are you, I'm not asking the question very well, but
No,
hopefully
it's
it
a very
makes
good
sense. Like, how
question.
are you facilitating that?
Beautifully articulated. Thank you for that. And thank you, because I'd rather answer by answering your question, deliver that material than make it part of the presentation itself, because I'm worried it might have just gone too deep down the wormhole there. So 2 different sets of instructions. The phase 1, where I'm in a sense, I'm requiring you to use artificial intelligence, which at first they always go, what? Because I've just been told in every other class, under no circumstances may you use artificial intelligence. So I'm saying, no, for phase 1, you will use artificial intelligence. And I say, and to research this topic, what you do, so team A, negative, team B, we've looked at the resolution. They now know what the terms of the resolution are. Ecology, I should go through very quickly, the one that, because it's the first one we do, so the topic is simply economy or ecology. The debate topic is resolve that the majority of governmental resources should be in to the aid of preserving ecological resources and maintaining economic stability only if the ecology has been left intact, like that. Bad translation of the Russian there. So from that topic, which can around the room, students are, I don't know the vocabulary about ecology, you know, the forest preservation, water resource. That's not something we learned in 3rd-year Russian or 2nd-year Russian, right? So the first thing is, how can you use AI? What would you ask in English to get that information in English? That's in the first debate topic. So the topic is ecology or the economy. What would you ask to come to a yes or no side? And they come up, they brainstorm quickly in class, they all offer different things, and they try a few and see what comes up in English. And then we pivot. This is only for the first topic. After that, we just skip this English bit. So we then pivot into Russian and say, now what are the questions you would ask in Russian to be able to get the information you think you're going to need to present your case? So right away, and again, this is a group brainstorm. Oh, we'd need to know, because this is talking about Russia, so what natural resources are endangered in Russia? What is the state of current ecological crisis or crises in Russia? How does the government treat, what is the historical treatment of the ecology by the Russian Duma? Do they even make laws? Do they legislate? Because again, this would be that new big block of cultural information. So they brainstorm back and forth, not as negative affirmative, but as my students, right, to come up with that first bank of questions. And then they, as I said, will come in literally with sheaves of either, usually it's just on their phone, of PDFs that have come off of either ChatGPT or AI editor or something like that, and then get into their groups to start going through the process. The hardest part is the second question, and that's where I still feel I'm also feeling my way around and did much better in my second try at this, is how do they get from the small big data set their notes to, this is what I want to present in the debate. This is how I turn it into go from ChatGPT language to my language. And that intervention's a little tougher, because what I have to do then is a lot of that they do on their own, so I can't like stand behind them and help coach them. But the little bits that we can do in class where I can say things to them like, you may want to look at what happened after Chernobyl in 1986 if you haven't looked at that already. And I can give them that as ChatGPT would in a way, but as myself, to help them move into creating the argumentation that they want. But that's more me as their debate coach rather than as their language coach. I'm teaching them more about argumentation than I am about what's the language. They're doing pretty well now with that, with the negotiation of what language is right or wrong. Yeah, it's a terrific question. Thank you. Yeah. Please be brave, be bold, be beautiful. Yeah, go for it, Jim.
My question's a little bit, and this is not largely, because I teach 610, which would be like the second rendition of it. And kind of going into the market, for example, in the Spanish program, we have to do this thing called the teaching practicum, where you kind of create your philosophy and everything. And I just got feedback like an hour ago saying you should probably think about adding your relationship or how you see ChatGPT or AI as part of that thing. So the reality is that the conversation's beginning. And when I teach a language as a native Spanish speaker, I really feel very, my level's not great when I talk about like structural language or grammatical stuff. And so I've always had to use my linguistic friends as like my crutch throughout my like last 4 or 5 years. And then now I've kind of through ChatGPT, I've allowed myself to kind of start using it. Yeah. And I've always been this thing where I've seen professors don't even dare about using it. And then my own personal one is when you're going through the library, every screen that I see when I go in through the PCL is ChatGPT. Yeah. And I feel like as someone who's in education, my dream and my aspirations are to help people learn better, if that makes sense. And so within it, I've explored it in many ways. And some of the things that I actually like try to present at the beginning, it's like, let's say that you are someone who's curious about predator versus imperfect, because that's just what I know. You know, you can ask it that question, and it is remarkable. It blows my mind away. And so there's not really this big administrative voice or something, because it's such an emerging technology that we're kind of still figuring out how to do it. And so I guess in my opinion is, and building off of Charlie, is like when you recommend how do they engage with prompts, or when you do these things, you know, it's such an evolving technology that it's kind of hard exactly on how to guide them when I'm myself still navigating it. And maybe it's not a specific question, but more of like my 2 cents.
It's a great observation that I can see. I could see a whole series of questions coming from that wonderful commentary. What I would say, I'm in the same boat of learning, how can I put it? I am so still trying to wrap my head around not just what it can do now, but what the potential of artificial intelligence in our language classes is. And I think it's simply, for me, early on as kind of the old person in the room was, there is just no way I am going to feel comfortable, be able to live with myself saying, you may not use this, any more than I do remember when we would do, you know, if anything from, you know, saying you may not use a dictionary, and you're doing a translation, you may not use a dictionary, and it's, why not? Why wouldn't you do that? You know, native users use dictionaries when they're looking for a word or wanting to get meaning or something, right? Is that the right word I want? What's a synonym for that, right? Why wouldn't I encourage them to use it in, again, a constructive way? Right, and I want to make that bright distinction. This is not to say if you have a homework assignment that says, write a short paragraph about blah, 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 and they just simply turn in a ChatGPT paragraph. That's, in fact, I think we're modeling a different use, that it's not about coming up with what you actually turn in, but what you start with. And so, this, to your point now, I hope, that very, I think, important first phase of helping them say, and a lot of it to me is, what do you do in English to find information? Do you pose questions? A lot of, right, yes, yes, yes. Do you just make a statement and see what ChatGPT says? Yeah, do that too. Do you just put up a few words? Yeah, do that too. And they start realizing there are different ways, different modalities, and from which you're going to get different responses from ChatGPT. That piece I put up, by the way, that had the security versus human rights, was a groundbreaking for all of us, definitely myself included, because I had been working with them. This was not this past iteration of the course, but the one before it, with students to try to say, what are the best questions for you to ask? And most were really working hard to ask questions that they would ask in the debate. Like, how are you going to fund that kind of, preserving the forests in Russia will cost billions of rubles. People will starve to death, right? How do you form the question to be able to get your argument? And so that was what they'd been focusing on. Then suddenly they see what a great piece of language ChatGPT came up with from just the two parts of the argument, just the two words, security, human rights. That was it. And ChatGPT went nuts and just produced. The relationship between these two terms is an extremely complex one, which of course cheered up the learners very much. Good, because I'm having trouble with this, right? So that made if ChatGPT is having trouble, I feel better. So that how to frame those initial questions to me is part of the methodology, if you will. It's part of getting them comfortable using it, not as the final product, but as on the road to their own work to help them come up with it. Because as they create those ways of getting the stuff from ChatGPT, they're actually learning more language at the same time to use it. I don't know if that was that. Is that anyone?
That's exactly.
Thank you. That was a really nicely formulated. Thank you for that. Please, yeah.
Yes, I have just a comment to keep talking about this topic.
Yeah.
How we are expected now to start, using
Right.
and in our classes. And I did a short survey, little study last year with one of my Heritage Spanish classes, asking them what they thought about using AI in education and how they are using it and what they think about, should we or should we not? And the bottom line, what I found was the students said, we want the instructors to tell us how to use it, what we can and can't do, and teach us how to use it.
Correct.
But then we reflect on this, who's teaching us, right?
Right.
And so I think it's great to come to have talks like this where we get ideas.
Yeah, that's
And then the other thing that I've reflected on is how I learn from my students themselves because they're the ones who are growing up with it.
Yeah.
And so they know more than I do. And I asked last year my academic writing for Heritage speakers, it's pretty advanced, and it's the point of the class is to get them to professionalize their Spanish so they can be bilingual in their professions. So I asked them, if you were going to get a job in English, you're going to go on Indeed or whatever, and you're going to write your CV or your cover letter, how are you going to ask ChatGPT for help?
Right.
Or are you going to ask ChatGPT?
Right.
And everybody said, most of them said yes, they would ask for help. And so I asked them, what do you do? How do you ask it? What are you going to do? And so learning from them, then using what they told me, I designed an activity where they did that in Spanish.
Yeah.
And so, but I did it step by step, and I said, show me the prompts, show me what it produced, highlight the changes you made to personalize the letter, the CV or the cover letter, so that it's really your voice in the letter and it's not that weird grammar, like you were mentioning.
It is kind of
And then we
tortured
wrote a
syntax, yeah.
reflection. We reflected on,
Yeah.
did it sound like me? Is it my voice? How am I going to use it in the future responsibly,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But so the point is I learned from the students also and just experimenting and going to great talks like this.
Thank you for that. That's lovely. That was just lovely. Thank you. Not to be too mansplainy or Jen-splainy about it, but honestly, some of you, few of you will remember, when Wikipedia first appeared. I remember it really well. And the Academy we were not amused. Why do I always go into British when I want to derive something? My wife, who's British, is not happy with this either. But why these pieces they're not double-blind reviewed. Any fool could be writing this. Where are you getting this from? And we tell our students, do not use Wikipedia. If I find out that you used Wikipedia for this paper, it will fail. We were saying these kind of tonterías back in the day. We really were this nonsense back in the early 90s. And slowly but surely, Wikipedia, I use Wikipedia all the time. It's got great resources. It gives you bibliographies. It's pretty peer-reviewed now because it gets cross-checked by all of us too. So the technology evolves, and I think we're having the same kind of gut response that we had from my generation, Wikipedia. Actually, before that, just using the internet, using Google, the idea that you could Google something, that we made Google a verb. All of that, it was so new to us that we were suspicious of it at first. I think that may be why I quickly said, I'm not going to fight this one. AI is clearly here to stay. We're not going to fight this. But how can we then, as you say, make it part of what we do to the good, the common good, and so that our learners get something from it? Yeah. And indeed, I purposely spit this stuff out so that I can get your comments, because I am so not the last word on this subject at all. I'm very much learning from you all as well. Yeah.
I would want to touch base on mentioning about the prompts. There is a really good talk that we sponsor from Morgana. I forgot her last name, so she's a French instructor. It's up on our website.
Yes.
She actually did a really, really good talk explaining prompts that she uses with her students. And she cites a book that right now I don't remember it, but it's available in the library, and I highly recommend everybody to take a look at that. It's on the TLC YouTube site. And then also just to say that our talk with the UT Sage, the AI designer, it's a 1-hour talk like this, but in our minds, it's a way to see, can we get a workshop? Can we get an in-depth workshop with them just solely for the language instructor? So we're bringing her here for that, and to say, hey, can we get something for us targeted with our voices?
And if you can give her input at that talk, she will then be able to custom make a talk for all the rest of us.
Please do come on the 25th, and if you can come, send questions.
Yes.
So we can kind of like grill and then get that workshop specifically done for you.
Please.
Yeah, that would be great, because
Yeah.
time is at such a premium, and just like
It's-
being
you're
I'm
right.
attending this workshop and we'll produce something that I can use.
Thank you, thank you. Well, thank you all so much for coming, and please do take care of yourselves in the coming days. I mean, you know what happens when these cold thingies come through Texas. We're not in Boston or in Minnesota anywhere, so take care of yourselves, stay warm and healthy, and hopefully I'll see you again soon. Keep fighting the good fight, everybody. Yeah, thank you all so much. Thank you.